Om Jai Shri Ramakrishna Jai. Well, welcome everyone to our Sunday morning talk by Pravrajika of Vrajaprana. I've known Vrajaprana since the 1970s. As a matter of fact, she just sent me some pictures that were taken. She sent them by email, some pictures that were taken in those years. And so it's such a delight to be able to offer her to you this morning. She joined the order in 1977. She has been a nun in Hollywood and Santa Barbara ever since. She is very learned in many aspects of the scriptures and traditions of the world, due to her many years of practice, the teachers she's been exposed to, but also just to a deeply innate curiosity and love of the spiritual. So I'll just leave it at that. If there's anything she wants to add about her own background or what she wants you to know about her, she can say it herself. But with that, I will say, thank you for making time for us, Pravrajika of Vrajaprana.
I'm so happy to be here again after, of course, I was here yesterday too, but I'm still happy from yesterday. And I'm happy to be here in the first place because it's been a long time since I've been to the Atlanta Center. I'm so glad to see some new faces, and I'm really glad to see some faces that I remember from before. So what a great joy to be here again. And it's great to see my brother Shankara. We go back a very long time. We're both older than dirt. So and look kind of like it. But we're both stay in good humor. And it's a joy to join you online, and it's a joy to see you in person. It's really nice. So let me start, and we'll see where we end up. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanirбhavati bharata abhyutanam dharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chidushkritam dharma samstapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. When goodness grows weak, when evil increases, I make myself a body. In every age I come back to deliver the holy, to destroy the sin of the sinner, to establish righteousness. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us all. And with that, good morning and almost Merry Christmas. Because that chant that I just chanted from the Bhagavad Gita is really what Christmas is all about, which we kind of forget about, because it's all about the avatar out of pure compassion, pure infinite love, taking human form and coming down to earth for our sake, making it possible for us to ascend. So we're now, okay, after the minute after Thanksgiving is over, the minute you've taken the Tums, the minute after that, we're all starting to buy presents, because it's all about the Christmas season now. And it's right now, it's like Christmas is sort of devolved into like finding presents, getting them, finding them, wrapping them. And then after that, wondering, is that the right thing? Should I switch that with that? It's like, it's become so present mania. And Christmas is, or at least it should be, a joyful season, not a season of just frantic anxiety, buy, is this enough, or is this the right thing? And it should be a time of celebration where we really celebrate and appreciate and revel in the fact that the infinite divine takes human form for our sake, our individual sakes, not just like this great grand humanity, but individually, this grace coming to us and making its infinite self available to us in a sweet human form. So it's a stunning miracle of grace. And when we think about that stunning miracle of grace and how much grace we've all received, how we happen to be here on a day when we could be out shopping, guys. Come on. We could be out there doing what we need to be doing right now. But instead, we're here gathered together, enjoying each other's holy company, thinking higher thoughts, thinking thoughts of God, instead of like, the right paper to get over the present. We could be doing anything else, but instead we want to bring our mind to a higher level and think of the beauty of the incarnation and the sweetness of the child Jesus and the Mother Mary. So instead of thinking of Jolly Santa and Red-Nosed Rudolph, who I love, don't get me wrong, I love him, we think about Jesus incarnate and his Shakti, his feminine divine counterpart, Mary. It's easy to kind of overlook Mary because it's a lot about Jesus, but according to the Hindu philosophy, every incarnation comes with a feminine counterpart. And Jesus has a feminine counterpart of Mary. See, we can easily overlook Mary because she tends to be kind of a static image, holding the baby. You go to museums and you see, the static image. But we forget how intensely powerful and strong she was, and how she is the embodiment of that Shakti power, that feminine aspect of the divine. A few years ago, I gave a talk and we had a questions and answers. And one of the questions I got was from a woman. She said, "Why aren't there any female avatars?" And I went, "But the avatar is both Shiva and Shakti. The avatar contains both the male and the female aspects of it, because every incarnation comes down with a Shakti. That is the power behind that incarnation. Rama came with Sita. Krishna came with Radha. Buddha came with Yasodhara. Sri Ramakrishna came with Sri Sarda Devi, Holy Mother. They all have that feminine counterpart with them. Swami Asheshananda repeatedly says that the incarnation and the Shakti are two sides of the same coin. You can't take one side without taking the other side too. You can't take fire without the power to burn. They come together. Shiva and Shakti, the divine incarnation plus the divine feminine counterpart, come together and form a beautiful whole of the avatar of the incarnation. They have to come together. Jesus and Mary together are beacons of spiritual light and power. And they are deeply inspiring, and we can really learn so much from them, if we can kind of get out of Santa Claus mode and get more into avatar mode. And also, I think a lot of people get to be a little Jesus phobic because of some forms of narrow, bigoted, toxic Christianity that are out there. But we can't blame Jesus for what people do to Christianity. It's not his fault. He was fabulous. But Christianity was able to, Houston Smith used to talk about wounded Christians. The Christians who loved Jesus but had been wounded by the kind of cookie cutter Christianity that had been forced upon them. And so they end up having, when you have a cookie cutter, you end up cutting up parts of the dough that you really wish had been stayed on. You don't want to do that with Jesus. You don't want to do that with any human soul. You just they're there for us. They don't insist on the cookie cutter. It's the organization that does that. So we can learn from Jesus and Mary if we open ourselves up to it. Gandhi said, "I like your Jesus, but I do not like your Christians. They are so unlike your Christ." It's like, ouch. Ouch. In the past 2,000 years, Jesus and Mary have conquered the world, not through politics, not through power, but through sacrifice, through love, through intense compassion, and through this beautiful power of purity and the strength that comes from that kind of really powerful purity. The purity that takes tremendous courage to hold, that kind of purity. That's how you explain it. And remember that that's what we should think about as Christmas, as they've come down for our sake. And then when we remember that, we can benefit from Christianity, and then we won't get kind of pulled in by this sort of riptide of consumerism that accompanies Christmas. Not their fault. So who was this Jesus that we're still celebrating 2,000 years after his birth, plus 2,000? Well, according to some polls, he's the world's most popular person. I did some digging around. It's like some people say he's the world's most popular person. Now, there's different polls depending on who you ask. Other ones, it's Elon Musk. Other ones, it's like, really? Other ones, it's Muhammad, Prophet Muhammad, and other ones, it's a soccer player, Cristiano or something. I don't know about soccer players, but it's like the world's most popular person. And it's kind of ironic. First of all, it's ironic because Jesus said that we should always pray in secret, and we should keep our spirituality to ourselves and not make a show of it. So it's kind of funny that, after all these years, he's considered by many to be the world's most popular person. It's also ironic because all the things that we think are important to be like a really famous person are exactly what he wasn't. He was a person who didn't want to be famous. He died a criminal's death, like a death that the Romans went way out of their way, and the tribunals at the time went out of their way to be humiliating. Went out of his way, and he died at 33. So he didn't have any longevity going for him. He certainly wasn't popular. But 2,000 years later, he rules us through love. 2 billion people now plus are praying to him. 2 billion, not including all the billions that prayed to him in the past 2,000 years. How was that possible? Because of his intense love, because of the safety and the purity and the acceptance that we get from Christ's incarnation on earth. It's interesting. So he is vividly remembered today, and every aspect of his life has gone over. But it's kind of ironic because what did Jesus teach? What did he live for? What did he come down to earth to tell us? Well, he taught love of God, love for our fellow human beings. He taught renunciation. He taught generosity. He taught us to turn the other cheek. Taught us to be non-judgmental. It's like, for being the world's most popular person, you would never know it. In today's society, this is actually what he taught, because this is what he lived and died for, these teachings. So how does he remain? How do these teachings still live? Because these are the teachings we all crave. We may not be able to digest them, but they're the truth. And so these are the teachings we crave, which is why Jesus is still loved and revered and deeply honored and emulated as much as humanly possible in some quarters. Why? Because he spoke the truth. Because he spoke the truth. And he lived it. And that's always the hard part. Always the hard part. Jesus gave simple, profound truths, easy to understand, available to everybody. Let's just think of the Beatitudes, just put a few out there, because he talked to a multitude of people. They're all uneducated. He made it simple so we can all understand, we can all follow. Okay, what are they? Okay, let's just pick up a few. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are they that hunger after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. They're all life-changing if we take them seriously, if we really think about it. But there's one that's particularly extraordinary, and that is blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. See God. Now that simple sentence has the potentiality of changing our life forever if we even think about it deeply. Swami Vivekananda said that this sentence alone would save mankind if all books and all scriptures were burnt and nothing remained. That one sentence, that God realization would stay alive in this world just with that one sentence alone. And he said, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. This sentence alone would save mankind if all books and prophets were lost. This purity of heart will bring the vision of God. See all as self and love all. Let all ideas of separateness go. That is purity of heart. to see God. The purity is seeing ourselves as divine, recognize that divinity within ourselves, and seeing it in every other being that we encounter. Responding to that divinity, not just trying to see it in ourselves in our meditation, but literally seeing it in every other person and responding to that divinity, not the differences, not the things that are the easy catch things. That person's like this, I'm like that. We're like that, those people are like that. Not doing that. When Jesus was asked, what is the most important spiritual teaching? What's the most important spiritual law to follow? He said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. And the second law is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Now, most of us here can just repeat that right off the top of our heads. We all know these words. The problem is following it. Problem is doing something about it. It's like we can all go, blessed, yeah, we can all do that. We can say the Beatitudes. We can all say, love the Lord thy God. We used to do it, and we used to do it all the time. But actually doing something about it, that's where the rubber hits the road. That's the tough part. That's the really hard part. Loving neighbor as ourselves. Jesus did follow it, and that got him into a big lot of trouble. It cost him his life. Loving his neighbor as himself, because he didn't make exceptions for that. He didn't. That was tough. So Jesus, when he talked about loving our neighbor, wasn't just talking about loving the people we like, the people we get along with. It's also loving the people we have a really hard time with. It's loving the people we really wish weren't not on the planet. And we all have our choice people we wish were really not on the planet right now. They would just go, I don't wish them harm, but it'd be nice if they weren't here. It's also loving them too. Those people, those kind of people. When Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself, it doesn't mean John and Mary next door, you bring the casserole when they move in next door, when their dog dies. That's not it. It means loving our neighbor because our neighbor is there all the time. Swami Vivekananda said, love your neighbor as yourself because your neighbor is yourself. And that's a tough row to hoe. It's really a tough row to hoe, especially now. Because there's no two different beings, no two different souls. There's no one Atman per customer. My Atman's better than your Atman. I got the new shinier one. It's the OS 15 or whatever it is. It's like we all only have one infinite divine soul. We're all looking at ourselves in various names and forms. We're all playing permanent Halloween with each other, all with our different disguises and masquerades and good guy, bad guy, male, female, this version, that version. It's all one infinite divine reality. And we project difference on that. And Swami Vivekananda stopped saying difference. That's purity of heart. Just one infinite divine reality, and responding to that rather than this person is like that and I can deal with that person, but I cannot deal with that person. It means bringing casserole to the immediate neighborhood of the world. That's a tough one. Holy Mother said, no one is a stranger, my child. The whole world is your own. Holy Mother Sri Sarda Devi lived that truth. And the problem is we're all called to do the same thing, not just love Holy Mother. It's like, that's the easy part, sort of. The hard part is actually trying to do what she asked us to do through her example, what Jesus did through his very vivid example, and an example that really cost him very dearly, because he wouldn't make compromises. It cost him dearly because he was willing to live a radical truth of non-differentiation, to see every human being as that divinity encased within a human body, and knowing that there's not only one infinite divine reality. And that's what he responded to. Not the differences, not making distinctions between that kind and this gender and that gender. All one divine reality, all one beautiful humanity that we insist on making differences with, because it's convenient for us, because we're mentally lazy and we don't want to make the moral arc to get to the other side, because that would be a lot harder. deal with the people we wish we weren't on the planet with. So that's what spiritual life is, not just repeating the words, not just believing the words when we read it on the page, but actually acting on it. And that's the toughest part of all. That's the toughest part of all, because the neighbor Jesus is talking about is the whole world. And the whole world is just big pain, especially now. It's just a really big pain. It's a tough teaching, especially now in this time of incredible tension and division and hatred and anger and vitriol. It's a tough time to be on the planet now. But for some reason, we're all meant to be on the planet now. We're all meant to be here right now at this place. And we're all meant to understand these higher teachings of Jesus and Mary, so that we can put in our little 2 cents worth of prayers and hope and put some sort of sense of positivity into this situation, which can be quite dire, which can often put people into a spin of depression, but that doesn't help anybody. It's just self-centered feeling sorry for ourselves. It's like, how can we alleviate the situation? What can we do to make our birds, infinite neighbors, get a better handle on this? How can we help? How can we put our arm around somebody that really needs it right now? How can we alleviate suffering where we find it? Well, if nothing else, at least we can pray for them. Even the people that we wish weren't on the planet. At least we can send them good thoughts and our love. At least we can do that. At least we can, if we're not an immediate solution, at least we can avoid being part of the problem. At least we can avoid doing that. We can avoid vitriol, avoid hatred, avoid anger. And when you see it coming your way, divert it. If you see a person going on a rant, see if you can calm them down. Remind them the gentler aspects of life. Remind that person that every human being has a burden that we'll never understand. Every human being has to go through life in the way they can. And every human being has infinite potential, as that divine is within her or his heart. That's what we have to remember before we start jumping on their head, before we compound the problem. And really, that's the only solution for us. Even if we don't even want a spiritual life, if we just want to be happy, a simple life, all we want out of this life is to just be happy. That's the only way we can live, because if we live any other way, if we engage in that sort of negativity and anger and hatred and vitriol and blaming, we will not be happy. You know, the Buddhists do a lot of studies in brain imaging, and they do a lot of studies with studying the monks with their meditation. And they found that if you are angry, you actually turn off the happiness center of your brain. The happiness center is here. If you feel anger or hatred, which is in the back of your head, it literally turns off that part of your brain which feels joy. So even if you just want to be happy, turn off the spigot, man. It's not helping anybody. It's not helping you. And our hatred and anger doesn't affect that person out there, except for you're kind of doing a submarine attack there. They just feel something, like, what is it? I feel something in the force. They feel something, but we can't compound it. We have to be a force for the kind and the good and the loving, as these great teachers have shown us from time immemorial. That's what they come down for, to bring us to this state of remembering who we are and remembering who everybody else is, whether they know it or not. That's what we have to do here. Jesus said about himself, I am the light of the world. Now, the light he speaks of is the light of divinity. Okay, thank you. The light of divinity, this light that he talks about, is the light of the divine self. That's that divinity within us all. It lies deep within our hearts, at the core of our being, and it's the core of every other being in the world. It's the only thing that really exists eternally, is that eternal light within ourselves that's one with God. The Bhagavad Gita said, the Atman is the light. The light is covered by darkness. That is why we dream. We dream all this nonsense. Jesus, like every incarnation of God, every avatar, comes down to bring us light. That is the whole, I am the light of the world. The same light is within our hearts, this Atman. And they're here to remind us of who we are, of that great gift that we have within ourselves, and the gift of the incarnation to come down and remind us of who we are. It's the light of pure consciousness, the light of infinite understanding, the light of wisdom. And we ignore that at our peril of simple unhappiness. Simple unhappiness. It's our choice to remember that. And when we do, we are so much happier. When we remember, we can see that in other people, we're happier and they're happier too. I once had this funny thing happen in the bookstore. I was working in the bookstore by myself, and these two scruffy people, they were probably 19, 20, came up, and they'd been traveling around in a VW van for obviously too long because they were kind of whiffy when they came in. And they were also really rude. And when they came in, and they had no idea that I was a nun. I was just wearing civvies like anybody else. And they started making these offhand remarks about nuns. Oh, you know what nuns are doing? They're just doing that with priests and blah, 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 blah. It's like they're talking, and they were very crude. And so I was getting my back up. I was like a dog with like, and then I thought, what are you doing, girl? And I thought, okay, maybe this is Rama and Sita who are coming to see me in disguise. They're going to test me. They're going to come in disguise. So they came in, and all of a sudden my attitude changed. And they said, isn't there any drinking fountain around here? I said, actually, no, but can I bring you a couple of glasses of water? And they went, oh, that would be nice. And so I literally thought, I'm giving this to Rama. I thought, I'm giving this to Sita. And I said, you must be hungry. They said, well, yeah, we haven't. I said, well, I got some prasad back here. Can I give you some prasad? And I gave them some prasad. And when I changed, they changed. It was like I was the problem, because I got my back up because I didn't like what they were saying. Like, who the hell am I to say what they should be saying? And once I turned the globe, their globe turned too. And then they said, well, can you give us any recommendations about where to go? I said, oh, Santa Barbara is such a beautiful place. Go to the beach, it's free. And I said, you can find some places down there. There's grocery stores you can walk into, and you can make yourself a salad. You can get some things they're pretty inexpensive. And I enjoyed their company. I enjoyed it. And later that afternoon, about 5 o'clock, they finally tracked me down. They gave me a call. So, well, hi. We didn't know quite how to get a hold of you, but the lady in the bookstore gave the number down here, and it was it's Vedanta Society. They don't know what's it called. So they called up and they said, we're going to go out dancing and drinking. You want to join us? And I said, that is so sweet of you, but actually I'm a nun and we've got Vespers coming up. And they went, what? You're a nun? And I said, yeah, I'm a nun. And they went, oh, you know you're nuns. I said, it's fine. I really appreciate the invitation. That is so sweet. I just have a wonderful time and enjoy the rest of your time in Santa Barbara. So once I got off my high horse, then they responded to me in a way because I treated them in a certain way, and they responded to that. And I had created this whole situation for no good reason. So it was a really good lesson to me that we can change situations by just adjusting our own attitude. That was good, and it was a good lesson for me. It really was. I came to Vedanta when I was very young. I was a young teenager. I was all of 15. Because I was 15, I knew everything. I was infinitely wise, unlike my parents, who were stupid, and all the adults that I knew. And I really took a dislike to that form of tepid Christianity that I was being shown, because there was no spiritual practice that I was being taught, no mystical teachings that I was being taught. And, between Sunday school and church, I was like, oh, get me out of here. There's no talk of spiritual transformation. The thing is, I didn't ask for it either. I obviously wasn't ready for it. I wasn't ready for it. I thought they were the problem. I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't asking for it. And I thought they were stupid. but I wasn't asking for it. But Jesus tells us that we're ready for it, we have to ask for it. Ask and you shall receive. Seek and you shall find. Knock and it shall be opened, right? It shall be opened unto you, right? Oh, so you mean I have to ask? Huh. I thought you'd be coming up to me, spreading a banquet in front of me because I'm so precious, right? No, no. Okay. And seek, which means with sincerity. With sincerity, not with a chip on your block, not with a sarcastic attitude, you know. It means having the right attitude with sincerity. And then knock. Well, knocking takes some effort. You mean you want me to put effort into this? You should be coming to me because I'm so everything. I'm the center of my world. You mean I'm not the center of your world? Every teenager thinks that, right? Yeah. So what we need is real sincerity, real effort. And if we really genuinely want a spiritual life, we have to put some effort into it. And we absolutely have to be sincere. Absolutely need to be sincere. If we seriously want to find, if we seriously want a spiritual life, if we seriously really seek the divine, we have to knock on that door and that door will be opened for us. But we have to take the first step, which means, first of all, sincerity, which means really looking at our own hearts and saying, is this really what I'm interested in? Or is it something else? What are my motives in this? And then put in a little effort to at least knock on the dang door, knock on the door. And then you take one step towards God, he takes 1,000 steps towards you. But how's he going to even know you're there unless you're knocking on the door? At least we can do that much. We have to make some effort. Jesus said, I am in my Father, you are in me, and I am in you. That is so beautiful. That's just so moving. Jesus is one with the Father, that infinite divine reality that's beyond name and form, beyond anything we can possibly comprehend. Infinite divine Brahman, light of existence, knowledge, joy, absolute. And Jesus is within us as that light of divinity, and that same light of divinity that's in every being we encounter, whether we choose to recognize it or not. That's a problem, whether we choose to remember it and recognize it. That's that light of divinity. Every incarnation comes to earth to remind us of who we are, to remind us of our divine potential, who we are and who they are. And that's the beauty of it. That's the grace. Who we are, who they are. And what grace comes to us unsought. And are we willing to just take up the ticket we've been handed? Doing that towards that light of divinity. You know, when Sri Ramakrishna's mother, Chandra Devi, was dying, she was on her deathbed, and he offered flowers at her feet. And he said to her, Mother, who are you? You gave birth to this body, which means you're not an ordinary mother. As you were Kausalya, Devaki, Maya Devi, Mary, so are you. Sri Ramakrishna names all the mothers of all the incarnations. So we can kind of ask ourselves, Mary, who are you? Who are you? Because Mary, like Sri Sarda Devi, Holy Mother, lived completely incognito, like an ordinary village woman, doing ordinary village things, just blending in like everybody else, doing everyday chores, just being a quiet woman. They're both very quiet, unassuming, deeply modest, deeply quiet. But in the Western world, Mary is virtually the only venerated feminine image of the divine, the only one. She's the only venerated aspect of God in the entire Western world. She's also revered in Islam, where there's an entire chapter on Mary called Maryam that's really very beautiful. So Mary, as the mother of God, Mary, a mother of an incarnation of God, holds a unique and really unrivaled place in world religions and, of course, in Christianity. Unrivaled place, because the Abrahamic religions don't offer a way to this very tender manifestation of God. It tends to be pretty masculine oriented, pretty patriarchal, pretty rough going there. But Mary is often seen as divine, as a divine intercessor. Sometimes she's seen as a saint, but she is the way to get in. She's the way to get in the door without being judged. She's the sweet one, the one that will be tender and understanding, that will kind of give us a break that sometimes we don't feel like we can get from Jesus, because Jesus had very high standards, as incarnations do. But the mom, yeah, your mother, come on, I get it. So in our tradition, she's Shakti. She's the feminine aspect of divine, the holder of power, the holder of all infinite capacity. And perhaps the sweetest and the simplest way to approach the divine is through seeing God as mother. In this path of seeing God as mother, there's no barriers. There's no sense of distance or even separation. I mean, you hold the child in your own womb. When you're out, you're still feeling that oneness with the mother. You know, the baby never thinks when it's being held in the child's arms, oh my God, what happens if she drops me on the floor? It's like, baby never questions it. It's like, I'm being held by my mother. You just feel that complete rest and assuredness of the baby being held in the mother's arms. And in fact, that's where we are the whole time we're on the planet, whether we realize it or not. We're being held in the arms of this feminine divine, whether we realize it or not. And finally, when we kind of go, okay, she's not going to drop me. She's going to put me exactly where I need to be. Then we can kind of like put our shoulders down and exhale. But that's why we relate to God as mother, for that feeling of complete intimacy and understanding. Because a child rests secure. Our mom is the one who feeds us, she cleans us, she dresses us, and she loves to do it. Because that's what moms love to do. They don't think, oh my God, I'm not gonna, can you clean this child? I don't want to do it. Like, no, they love to do it because it's your baby. It's your baby. And that's the way the Divine Mother feels about us. Holy Mother said, does her mother throw away her child when the child soils itself? No, she cleans the child. That's what the child loves. That's what the mother loves. And that's that tenderness and intimacy and all forgiving mercy that we get from Mother Mary. There's so many stories in medieval literature of sinners who make a bargain with the devil, and they sign on the dotted line to give Satan their souls, and Mary comes down with a sword and goes, rap, takes the sinner back by the arm, drags it back to earth, and that person becomes a saint. Well, that's sort of like the power of Shakti. Got the sword. It's like any good mama bear. Any good mama, any good feminine as a good mama bear. You touch my dog, you're dead. You know what I mean? Hurt my child, you're dead. I will go after you. Any good aspect of the divine feminine is like got the mama bear in her. And that's what the Shakti does. Holy Mother Mary, taking her sword, I'm going to save you from that because I love you, because you're my child. That's what we get from this divine Shakti, this power of Mary, the power of every divine mother. Our mother loves us and nurtures us so intensely. She's not going to give us up, no matter what. No matter what kind of a horrible thing we've ever done, she doesn't care. You're still her kid. She understands you deeply. So that tenderness and sweetness that's so much part of the Christian tradition, so much part of Christmas, is due in large part from Mother Mary. And it's all that tenderness and that purity that goes through. And that purity comes from intense strength. The strength that she knows that she will have to endure what no one should endure. When the prophet Simeon, when she comes to the temple of Jerusalem, and that the baby's just a child, just an infant, and the prophet Simeon tells her what Jesus will become and says, and a sword will pierce your heart, he says to Mary. And Luke says, and she pondered that within her heart. She pondered that within her heart. She knows what's coming down the pike. But she's our mother, and mothers will endure anything for their children. So who was Mary? Generations before Mary was born, the prophet Isaiah said, behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and it shall be called Emmanuel, God with us. God with us, taking form as a human being, God with us. Now, we have no historical information about Jesus, about Mary. We have a little about Jesus because actually in Ovid, you read a little bit about that troublemaker Jesus who, thank God, they've done something with in Roman literature, but nothing on Mary. Women were pretty anonymous, right? Pretty anonymous there, especially Jewish women. So we have the only thing we know about Mary is what we get from the Gospels. That's what we know. And of course, many in other literature that is, whether we call it fables or myth or stories, but they're still very inspiring in many ways. So what we do know about Mary is she was engaged to Joseph, a carpenter. He was much older than her. She was engaged to be married when she was probably around 14. That was about the usual age that Jewish girls got married then. Very simple life. We don't know much about Joseph, except he was a carpenter. He was older, and he was known as a righteous man, which actually in Hebrew is tzaddik. He was a tzaddik, which means a man who with a profound reverence for God. Now, the word they use is righteous, but that isn't what the Hebrew word says. He had profound reverence for God. Do you think an incarnation is going to go down to like Joe and Haley next door, or kind of like troubled beings? No, he's going to choose people where he can grow up in the right atmosphere. So he chooses a tzaddik. Now this is going to be a problem because then divine grace descends. And sometimes this divine grace can be kind of troubling at the time because the angel Gabriel is sent from God, and he comes to Mary and says, "Rejoice, Mary." Now, it has often been translated as "Hail, Mary," but excuse me, my classicist background says, wait a minute. Luke wrote that in Greek, not Latin. Ave is Latin, which means hail, like hail, Caesar. But what the Greek says is "Kyrie." Rejoice, Mary. Rejoice, which is really much more to the point. Rejoice, Mary, for the Lord is with you. Blessed are you among women. What a blessing to be associated intimately with an incarnation of God, to be his feminine counterpart. Yes. Now, when Mary saw him, it's the Gospels tell her she was troubled at his appearance, like, okay. And he was troubled by what he meant. It's like, what is he telling me? And the angel says, he realizes she's afraid, and he says, fear not, Mary, for you have found favor with God. And now you will conceive in your womb and bear a child, and you shall call him Jesus. Now, Mary's a pretty practical woman, and she said, I'm a virgin. How's this going to happen? Let's get down to brass tacks here. She's engaged to a much older man. She's living in a small village. You're telling me I'm going to bear a son. And how's this going to happen? And he said, the Holy Spirit will come upon you, and God's power will rest on you. Now, she knows that this is going to be difficult for her because being pregnant in a small village with a much older man, most women would say, can you take your favors someplace else? Because this is going to be a problem for me in the village. People are going to give me some stuff. What to speak of what they give Joseph? People are going to be talking. This is not going to be an easy situation. But Mary's response to the angel is one of those profound spiritual teachings we will find not only in Christianity, but in any world religion. Her response is she says, behold the handmaid of the Lord. Let it be unto me according to your word. Complete surrender to the will of God. Complete egolessness. Like, wait a minute, what's this going to do for me? Wait a minute, this is going to be tough for me. It's like she kind of echoes, she doesn't echo, actually she foreshadows what Jesus will say 33 years later. When he, in the Garden of Gethsemane, he says, asking God 3 times that his destiny be taken away from him, praying for God that he won't have to undergo what he will undergo. And then he says, but not my will, your will be done. Your will be done. That kind, and then going in with complete peaceful heart and complete surrender to what will be terrible suffering, with complete self-surrender. Mary shows that 33 years earlier, complete surrender. This is going to be a difficult path for her. It's going to be very difficult. She's called upon to do something quite extraordinary, but she's exactly the right pure vessel, because she has so little, there's so little ego in her that she's transparent, so that the divine shines right through her. This absolute lack of ego. It's very moving. Saint Bernard, not the dog, but the saint. We all like both of them. So Saint Bernard said that God chose Mary not because of her virginity, but because of her humility, because of her absolute lack of ego. It was her utter lack of ego. For that reason, God chose Mary. That is so beautiful, because the ego is our eternal problem. And Mary didn't have to deal with that, because from the very beginning, she showed perfect serenity and perfect surrender. Her lack of ego allows her to be a perfect vessel. We see her great humility and her lack of ego in her beautiful quietness. In the gospel, she's only recorded as having spoken 7 times. Now, when you think of these thousands of years of devotion to Mary and the saints that have been made by simply praying to the Blessed Virgin Mary through 7 sentences and the example that she led, it's really quite remarkable, because her example and her sentences are very powerful. So she taught through silence. And contemplatives for the past 2,000 plus years have used her as a role model with that deep silence. She kind of echoes what we hear in the Psalms of David. Be still and know that I am God. If we have outer noise and inner noise, how do we hear the voice of God? Be still, outside and inside, and know that I am God. That's what Mary hears, is this, she is that deep communion with the divine. So you don't need to have a lot of chatter with that. You just have to be quiet enough to be able to be in communion, to be in complete communion with the divine. Luke describes all these events of Mary's life, and he always uses the phrase, she pondered all this in her heart. He uses this for the times of joy and the times of great sorrow. All of it she takes in and she ponders it in her heart. She was a woman of amazing strength and intelligence and almost unfathomable courage. Unbelievable courage. All accepting with complete self-surrender, which takes a massive amount of strength to have that kind of acceptance of the will of the divine. Not my will, may your will be done. May your will be done. So her humility was the result of her surrender to God. But what's interesting, that it was because of Mary's prompting that Jesus performs his first miracle, and his active ministry begins because of Mary. With all their quietness. Okay, the first miracle is at the marriage of Cana. There they are. And Mary, in the middle of the celebration, says, they have no wine. Simple sentence. And Jesus, okay, you obviously can get from this conversation, two-line conversation, how much their understanding there is between these two profound souls. Jesus says, what is that to you and to me? My hour is not yet come. It's like, I'm not ready for this yet. Mary doesn't even bother to answer him. She says to the servant, do whatever he tells you to do. It's like, okay, mom says I got to do that. I roll. All right. So what happens? Jesus tells them to fill 6 jars full of water. Okay, we're not talking about your little yogurt jar. Okay, we're talking about a jar that each one holds 30 gallons of water. We're not talking about a little bit for a little wedding celebration. We're talking a massive amount of wine for the multitudes. So he transforms the water into wine, basically declaring himself to be the Messiah. It's a statement. He makes a big statement because Mary's like, bing, bing, they have no wine. And his active ministry begins. Because it's pretty hard to ignore when you've got wine for hundreds of people. Yeah, okay. Have a good time. So this is how Mary began to be seen as the intercessor to Jesus, because people understood that Jesus cannot turn down any request from his mother. A great saint, in fact, said, no one can resist a call or a request or an order from Mother Mary, not even God. So for that reason, she was seen as, if Jesus is going to be a tough call for you, if you think he's going to be judging you too harshly, go to Mary. Go to his mother. There you find the soft spot. There you see the one where you can come up running and she'll go, oh, honey, don't cry, don't cry. I'll take care of it. I'll talk to that guy's mother. I'll show you. Mama Bear going to come out. That's who she is. Anyone who sincerely seeks her help, Mary will be there for them. That beautiful rosary. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. How beautiful, how beautiful. Holy Mother, Sri Sarda Devi was asked by a disciple, why do you hide your divinity? She said, too much manifestation of divinity creates fear in the minds of people. She said, people won't feel intimate if they see signs of divinity. So that's why we relate to God as mother. Somebody doesn't bring out all the, like the car that has too many things on the dashboard, you don't even know what they are, so you don't touch them because you're afraid like something like the dashboard's going to explode. It's like you want someone that you can relate to very simply and sweetly, like mom. You don't have to explain everything to her. She knows. Someone that we can just open our hearts to feel intimate with. So that's why the avatar comes down with his Shakti, with his divine mother, so that we can approach the divine without fear, without this fear of being judged, of being reproached, of being humiliated, of being like called on the carpet for, like Santa who puts a piece of coal in your stocking rather than something nice, of being like you didn't follow all the commandments like I told you to do. Your mom understands. Your mom understands you're a kid. And for your mom, you're always a kid. You might be 72, still driving your mother around, and she's saying, honey, you have to turn left. It's like, I've been driving longer than you have. To your mom, you're always a kid. And for our divine mother, we're always her children. And she will always be there for us because that's her nature, is to love and understand, not to judge, not to give us a hard time, not to remind us what the rules are. That's for dad. It's for mom won't do that to us. Swami Asheshananda, Holy Mother's disciple, often said that Sri Ramakrishna is the method and Holy Mother is the grace. And we can do that with Jesus and Mary too. Jesus is the method. Mary is the grace. They both have grace, but sometimes the grace comes a little easier for us when it comes through a softer form that we don't feel like shy about or like inhibited with. The feminine counterpart has the grace. The masculine counterpart has the method. This is how you do it. That seems kind of hard. Well, go to the grace. Go to the grace, and they'll take you there too. Avatars and their Shaktis come down to earth for just this purpose. They come to bring us hope and courage and joy, because that joy is who we are. That's our real nature. It's that infinite divine well of joy within our hearts that we forget about. It's there available to us all the time. And they give us that at times in our lives and times in the world when the world seems pretty impossible to navigate. It seems like we just can't deal with it. It's just too much. It's just become impossibly difficult to get through all this morass of what's going on around us. And maybe what's going on within us, that we simply can't navigate it. But with this divine grace, everything happens. Everything happens. The walls come tumbling down. All the circular paths are made straight. And we realize that we've been in our mother's arms the entire time, being held with so much love and tenderness and infinite grace. That is what the incarnation comes. That incarnation and the Shakti come down to remind us of who they are and who we are. And with that, I wish you a very Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, and a Happy New Year. And I can conclude with a chant, and then if anyone has any questions or arguments, we can go on from there. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Or disagreements?
I have a few things.
Maybe vegetarian, but I'm tough.
I have a few things to share if you can hear me.
Well, I'll just make a comment. And this that you talked about was absolutely the foundation of my late wife's spiritual journey. She was a cradle Catholic and she was a Marianist. She loved Mother Mary and the baby Jesus. And anyone who wants to talk to me privately about it, I'll tell you what that resulted in when it was time for her to leave the body. It was absolutely remarkable. Mary came for her.
Full of grace, full of grace, full of grace.
And Marjorie completely depended on that grace.
It was interesting to me when I was a young Vedantan, and I went to the cathedral at Chartres. How old was I? Somewhere between 17 and 18. And I went there and I saw this beautiful Pietà in marble at the front when you walk down the main aisle. And there weren't many people there, and I thought, oh, it's so beautiful, why aren't people here? And then I walked to the side chapel, and there was the Black Virgin. They call them the Throne of Wisdom Marys. She was about this high, maybe. Black. And they asked the priest, why is she black? Well, she's black because she's black. And then the quote from one of the Psalms, I am black but beautiful. I am black but comely. One of the great Psalms of David. And there were so many people praying to her that you could feel the heat coming from all the candles lit. I couldn't believe it. And people were going up and kissing her feet. And people were putting pictures of their loved ones at her feet. And people were writing her notes and putting them at her feet. And I couldn't pull myself away. I just stayed there. I just stayed there and prayed. Because I thought, here's the place that's happening in Chartres. It's this one with this beautiful Virgin Mary. This beautiful, they call her Notre Dame du Pilier, Our Lady of the Pillar. And she is powerful. She is one of those that can make the earth move with her footstep. There seems to be some sort of connection between her and the Black Goddess. Before, it was a magnificent Gothic cathedral. There was a site of a Druidic worship site. And if you go down into the basement, they have what they call le puits, the fountain. There's a natural spring of water that's considered sacred there. And that was an ancient Druidic site of worship. But of course, all those sites have this power that you can feel. So it was a natural place where they would put up a cathedral. And then it was worshiped there and in that Druidic cathedral, in that Druidic site, they worshiped the God that was to be born. And there they also have what they call the veil of the Virgin. Now, whether that's really the veil of the Virgin, God alone knows. But what's important is that it's a worshipped, revered article there, where you can go up and you can see it. And they say during the times of where the cathedral is being attacked, they would bring that out and they would run in fear. They would just give up the battle. So it's also one of those important sites. But just for me, sort of expecting a cathedral to be all about the Pietà, and then going in and seeing just this Virgin, who were just like, and literally feeling the heat from hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of candles. It's like, wow, these people know. These people know. And that was just, if you ever go to France, don't miss going to Chartres. It's only 45 minutes from Paris. A beautiful, beautiful sacred place. I talk too much. Y'all talk now.
You say the name again. What is the name?
Any questions?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Can
Yes.
you?
So, as you were saying, the dark goddess, like Mother Goddess Kali. So, the thing, if you read in the Mahavidyas about goddess,
Yeah.
she is getting rid of all these asuras or demons.
Yes, that's what mothers do.
Yeah, but she's actually getting them to a better spot.
Yes,
She's doing it with all her weapons, which are like ways of getting them enlightenment or closer to her.
That is-
They're her kids too.
yes, they're her kids too, even the demons, because even when in the Chandi, it is said she has this beautiful, beneficent smile on her face as she slaughters the demons, and by her very killing them, she throws them into heaven. She puts them in heaven.
She directs her weapon.
She direct against them, so that even the inimical ones, purified by the missiles, may attain the higher worlds. Such is your most kindly intention towards them.
I had this pleasure of, I don't know, mother wanted me and my little girl, all of 8 years old, first time to India, and we had the pleasure to visit Dakshineshwar.
Oh, wow.
It was a bliss. Right? It's phenomenal. Like just the energy you feel it means. Everything is so calm.
The energy and the love that comes, the power and the love. Yeah.
Tears in my eyes.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's beautiful. And these feminine forms appear in other religions, but in the Abrahamic religions, they've been so much shut down, which is a pity, because
Mother has inside
every being has both a feminine side and a masculine side. Every male has a feminine side, every woman has a masculine side. Every human being is sort of a balance of these elements.
Exactly.
If you go completely into patriarchy, it's kind of scary. If you go completely into just matriarchy, that can be scary too. We're all a balance of different natures. But to have that balance, and you expect that infinite divine is not going to be just one gender only one manifestation of tends to be a very patriarchal power,
Yes.
which of course mirrors the society at the time that it was formed.
Yes.
But it isn't very psychologically healthy, because then we don't feel like we have a place to go if we're sort of fearful of this authority figure. If we are fearful of an authority figure that we feel will condemn us, then where do we go? Where do we go to find acceptance for who we are? We have to have a place that will find a place in the world of the divine that will accept all of us, not just the part that gets that will meet for official approval. You know, I guess you tick that box, right? But for every part of us, because we're all human beings with both good parts and foibles too. Every human being has a foible, but in the eye of the infinite divine, those are just like, come on, who cares? But we often don't give others or ourselves a pass. We get the pass from the divine. It's like, you're my child. You're my child. I love you. This is a temporary thing. You'll get over it. You'll be fine.
Um, may, may I make some comments? I don't have a question. I have two comments. First, I can go on listening.
I'm listening to two things because I can't really hear what's on the Zoom.
Oh, I am on Zoom.
Uma Majumdar
Yes, please.
talking, but I can't hear what she's saying.
Okay.
And nor can anybody else.
Can you now?
Oh, you think I know how to use a computer? You come here.
I'm not an Apple
Yeah,
guy.
I
so-
know.
Oh, okay.
But I
Listen.
think
Can you now listen?
Oh, keyboard.
yeah, there is.
Oh, okay, Uma.
Okay. Yesterday I enjoyed thoroughly, and today I should say, I wish I was there, but I drank through the nectar of every word, and I so much, I can go on listening to you forever. That's my first comment.
Well, I can't, so thank you.
I know I can. And second thing, the examples of Shakti that you gave were so touching, because even if suppose one is not that great or well known as Mary or as Shadhamani Devi, I think each family has some feminine Shakti in the family.
Absolutely.
We call them mother or sister or whichever relationship. But one incident in which Mahatma Gandhi, what he said about his wife, Kasturba, he said that whatever lessons in non-violence, endurance, and still prevailing through that power of endurance, I learned from my wife.
Uh-huh.
So he openly gave compliments in his autobiography. Kasturbai, I learned my lessons of prevailing through Atma Shakti, the power of the soul, without being nasty. And that compliment he openly paid to his wife. And I think within every woman, that potential is there.
That's very true. I think that potential is within us. I was very moved by going to the Dr. King, the MLK, ML King Center yesterday, and seeing how much Coretta, her strength and her power, and how much Dr. King really, and he openly says how much he owed to her for her patience and her endurance and her ability to, God knows she suffered along with him, and she suffered longer than he did. But to endure what she endured and to just patiently bear and go forward with such strength and courage, it's really remarkable. So every person has that divine mother within their hearts. We just how to manifest that divine power within us, that infinite mercy and compassion.
Mhm. Thank you.
That is Swami Vivekananda said about Sri Ramakrishna, I could never think of him entirely as a he, because he thought of him often as Mother Kali.
Yeah.
And Sri Sardadevi, when he died, when Sri Ramakrishna died, said, "Oh, Mother Kali, where have you gone, leaving me alone?" So every person has that aspect of divinity. It's within them, because gender is actually a very small thing within us. We change gender lifetime to lifetime. It's no biggie. It's just back and forth, back and forth. But what is our real nature? The divine. That's who we are. That's the only thing that's unchanging, that infinite divinity within us. And so we shouldn't get so hung up on the differences, but let's get hung up on what unites us, that divinity within us, and that unites us. If we remember, that's what counts.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
but I can't, who, is it Bhagirath?
Yes, yes. Many things I wanted to share, but for the sake of time, I'll be little economical in what I want to say. But number one, Krishna is associated not with his own mother by birth, but by the mother who raised him, Jashoda.
Yashoda, yes.
Jashoda is the symbolic mother of Krishna, which goes to show you don't have to give a birth to someone, which
That's right.
tells the Virgin Mother. You don't have to give a birth, but the way you raise. And that is the reason that Krishna is always associated with Yashoda. But Yashoda's arrival in Krishna's life was crucial because from birth on, she gave him love.
Yep.
She knew that this man is full of intelligence, logic, jnana, knowledge, but he needs love in order to make that knowledge translatable into earth. And that is the message she gave, and then she disappeared, and that is why Krishna could become a mother and father to Arjuna.
Yes, that's true. That's
Because
true.
time and again he addresses Arjuna as Tata, my son. So that he would not have been able to do if he did not receive the love of Mother Yashoda. Because
Yeah.
that is transformation which the mother induces. I agree with you that there is no, when you say mother, we are not talking about a gender. This is the reason why we have the concept of Shiva, who is half man and half woman, what we call Ardhanari Nateshwara.
Yeah, yeah.
Number three, the story of wine and water you said is also existing in Krishna's story. That one time when a bunch of sages came to Draupadi, said that we are hungry, we want to eat. And Draupadi says, I have finished everything. I have cleaned up my vessel.
One grain.
So Krishna says, show me your empty vessel, cleaned up. There was one grain of a rice. And like water into wine, he turned it into mounds of food and he fed everyone.
Yes.
I goes to show that there is a power of divinity, whether you are in India, here, or anywhere, to ability to not only be divine, but to conceive a divine element. And when that is gone, then there is no hope. That's why your earlier shloka, that yada yada hi dharmasya janil bhavati vada is so relevant. This is exactly Mother Nature. The moment the humidity and heat goes to a particular point, it rains. You don't have to do anything, it rains to tone down the humidity and bring little cool thing. That is the nature of Mother Nature. So, in many ways, what you said is so parallel and so heart-touching. And it's about the time we use heart and head both at the same time in order to understand God. And that way, your talk is wonderful. And there was a article in National Geographic with a statue of Mother Mary, and millions of people, when they come here, they just bow down. Not a word, even not a word of prayer, because sometimes silence is the language of God.
A few years ago, maybe 5 years ago, maybe 6, anyway, I went to Turkey. And I didn't realize that that's where Mother Mary lived out her days. At the foot of the cross, Jesus says to his beloved disciple John, "Son, behold thy mother." To Mary, he says, "Behold thy son," indicating John. So it was not a good place to be a follower of Jesus after the crucifixion. They were going after Christians. They were killing as many as they could find, and the lions found them yummy. The Romans liked to put them in with gladiators. And of course, as we know, some of the apostles were crucified and some of them were shot with arrows. But John had the order from Jesus to protect Mother Mary.
Mm.
So they went to Ephesus, and Ephesus is now in Turkey. It was part of the Roman Empire at the time, but kind of far afield. So Ephesus is also the place where St. Paul was run out of town when he preached to the people there. If you can read in the gospel, if you can read the letter to the Ephesians in the New Testament. So interesting enough, there was a 19th century Catholic saint by the name of Catherine of Emmerich.
Yes.
She was a visionary. She was never able to get out of bed. She was a lifelong cripple. I know there's a better word for cripple than that, but it's the only word that comes to mind. She was handicapped. She could not get out of bed in any case, but she was a visionary. And this was also at the time of, she was German, Emmerich. So there was also a time of the great German Indologists and explorers and anthropologists. So they were doing, and they found during this time of her life, they were doing excavations of Troy. They found 3 different sites where Troy had been. And because the changing of the river and the tides, Troy had to kind of move up. So she talked to this German archaeologist and said, "I've seen where Mary lived. I've seen where Mary and Jesus lived." She gave him the exact directions, not too far from the last sighting of Troy, actually, which made it easier to find. She told him what the view was from that particular mountain, where it was located, how he would find it. And he believed her and followed her. So he went up there and excavated. You know how long that takes. You get a little brush and you go down. Sure enough, they found the remains of the foundation of a wooden home. Not only that, but the women of the village for 2,000 years had been putting down white roses there for the mother of the prophet. Now, when you went there, there's a beautiful breeze that comes there. And all of a sudden becomes very silent. And when a big busload of tourists comes off and kind of belches out all these tourists, at first they're like that, and then it becomes very quiet. And everyone stays very quiet. And what I found fascinating is, just like Chartres, there was a whole wall of messages to Mary. And this was complete. I had no idea about this place. I had read, of course, we read the letter to the Ephesians. You read all this, but I had no idea. I'd heard of Ephesus, but I had no idea it was in Turkey. But even even if you know nothing about, these were Japanese tourists that came in. They had no idea. They just came in, and even then, the atmosphere was just like, it was like there was a fire and someone put it out with a blanket, but it was a blanket of peace. It was very, very, very amazing. John was buried there. Paul was run out of town there. Mary. And it was believed that Mary was bodily assumed in heaven. Who knows about that thing? I don't think it's terribly important. What's important is her role in our lives. What's important is that she came down for our sake. What's important is the avatar comes for our sake and reminds us of who we are. Okay, that sounds like what we ought to do. Yeah, remember that.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Any other comments or questions?
Yes, Miss Miss Pravrajika, this is Haima from Denver, Colorado.
Hi, Haima from Denver,
I am
Colorado.
so privileged to hear this, your sermon today. I'm so blessed. I'm so blessed. I feel like you are a life-changing force for this universe. I wish this
I
1
feel
hour
that way
of
about
your
coffee.
I wish this 1 hour of your sermon will be delivered all over the televisions and all over the churches, temples, so people can open their hearts and brains, understand the truth of religion and spirituality. It's so many people have misconception about religions and spirituality. So I just enjoyed every second, every moment of your lecture, your sermon, I would say. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm really
Mother's
blessed.
grace. All of
And you,
us here know it's grace. Grace.
yes,
grace.
it is. And you proved that be the change to see the change by Mahatma Gandhi. You
Yeah.
proved that with those two crude people. I have had so many incidents like that. It changes. When we change, everything changes
When we
around
change,
us.
everything changes. That's
Changes around us. Thank you so much. That's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us, Haima. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Bye. Namaste.
Namaste. Namaste.
Samaji is our reader for Tuesday and Wednesday class.
Ah, good for you. Good for you.
Thank you. I'm honored. I'm honored to be the reader Tuesday, Wednesdays. I'm so honored. Brother Shankara's wisdom, we grabbed so much of his wisdom and knowledge.
He has plenty to give. Any other comments or questions?
Yes, please. Come again. Come often.
There's one in the back here.
The question of an ignorant person. So, how did God manifest himself to you in a way that you decided to become a nun? You call yourself a nun.
Okay.
And so what changed in your life at that point? And where do you mostly find God now in your current situation?
I came upon God through a spiritual teacher who totally transformed my life. And that happened very accidentally, according to my standpoint. Obviously, I had been dragged there, kicking and screaming by the Divine Mother. But I was an anti-war activist. And so I was protesting the war in Vietnam, and we were hitting all the churches in town. And we were leafleting churches because we were organizing a march down the main street of Santa Barbara. And so we had finished our leaflets at the Catholic Church, and then this guy that I'd been paired with, because I was too young to drive, said, well, let's go up to the Vedanta temple. I said, what's that? He said, oh, it's this beautiful place. It's so cool. They got a big parking lot. Yeah, we're all about the parking lot, because we wanted to put our leaflets under the windshield wipers. So that was my sole reason for coming to the Vedanta temple. And he said, well, let's go inside. And I was very suspicious. That doesn't look like a church. It's like something, but I don't know what it is. So we went in there. He said, sure, it's beautiful. It's like, fine. So we went in there, but I was curious. And the lecture was probably half over. And the very thin Swami who spoke was Swami Pavitrananda, and I couldn't understand his English. He had a very thick accent, and I'd never heard an accent apart from a German accent my entire life. That was all. So I didn't understand what he had to say, but also he talked like that with a very high-pitched voice, and I understood God, but that was it. But it was a beautiful atmosphere in the temple. It was very serene. And then after the talk, the Swami, who was actually the head of the center, which I didn't know at the time, thanked him, and they all went down to shake people's hands. And the tall, thin Swami, who scared me because he was too skinny, so I thought he had to be austere, and God knows I'm not austere. So he's like, shook hands very formally, and the little Swami next to him just put his hand very lightly over mine and looked at me and smiled. And I cried, 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 and I was humiliated because I was like, stop the war machine, bomb the Pentagon, you gotta stop this, we gotta stop this from just death and destruction of Cambodia. I was angry, and I was gonna force peace down people's throat, whether they wanted it or not, because I was 15, and I knew what everybody else didn't know. So yeah, I was a very angry young woman. Later, I asked Swami Prabhavananda, I said, Swami, how do you bring peace to the world? And he just smiled, and he said, you can't bring peace to anyone unless you yourself are peaceful. And I went, bam, bam, busted. totally busted. If you're not peaceful yourself, how do you think you're going to bring peace to anybody else? You can't choke people on your peace. You know, you've got to be one with them. And what do you possibly understand of the world? So that was meeting him. And I thought, I had never been around a person like that in my life. I've been very interested in religion since I was a child. I went to synagogues, I went to different churches. I did a whole fourth grade report card on Islam. I was very interested in it all. And I was just interested in the ways that people approach. And then I was very interested, like, how do you explain evil? How do you know, I had a girlfriend in sixth grade that died of cancer. She was in a lot of pain. I thought, well, God, how does God allow that? How does God allow the Holocaust? That was like I could not get over that one. How did you allow the Holocaust to happen? Either you don't care, which makes you like a lousy God, or you're impotent, which makes you useless. Then you're not God by definition. So, I mean, I really, 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 really had a hard time with that. So then first of all, I met Swami Prabhavananda, and he was like, whoa, how do you have a human being like that who can just transmit holiness? I'd read the word holy, 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 but I didn't know really what it meant. I thought it just meant being a Puritan. I didn't know that it meant like it was transferred through love. I didn't know that this love was actually, and holiness was actually transferable, that you would just like come out of a person like that, like you feel when a person has a temperature. That's the way it came out. It was just, so after that, I got a little book of Thus Spake Sri Ramakrishna. It cost me all of 10 cents, I think, which was a lot in my day, you know. That was a week's allowance. So I went through that, and everything I read was like, this is the truth. The first sentence I read, I was walking to high school. I was a sophomore in high school. And the first page I turned to, I don't think they've changed the pagination at all. This is India. So they said, just because you don't see stars in the daylight doesn't mean that stars don't exist. So as in the days of your ignorance, you think that God doesn't exist, doesn't mean that God doesn't exist. I thought, and I remember holding it to my heart as I walked down the street, saying, he's spoken the truth. I'm reading the truth. And for the first time in my life, I thought, I'm reading the truth. There's nothing to quarrel about here. It's so obvious. It really struck home. And then I kept coming back to Vedanta and back to Vedanta and back to Vedanta. And after I'd been coming back about a month, there was a little table, maybe 4 times, the size of one of those, 8 by 12 tables, plastic things. And they would sell like little books, little Thus Spakes and Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna and a few things like that. So I went up there. I was looking at it, probably going to get a Thus Spake Vivekananda or something, really live it up and get another Thus Spake. And don't ever denigrate Thus Spakes. They are really useful. So the woman behind who was a nun, I discovered later, said, oh, you're back. And I said, yeah. I said, you sound surprised. She said, oh, we thought we were way too square for you. And I said, I love this place. And she said, well, you ought to come down and visit. Well, you should have tea in the convent. And I said, convent? There's a convent? And she said, yeah. I said, where? And she said, oh, right down through the parking lot. And I said, well, I'm going to join. Everyone laughed. They thought that was hilarious. Well, I was 15, so it was pretty hilarious. But 10 years later, I showed them. Yeah. I had a lot more than I needed to experience, a lot of study I needed to do, a lot of growing up I needed to do. But 10 years later, I realized it was what I wanted. More than anything else, it was what I wanted. But it's an unusual job description. There's not a lot of people signing up for it. If you don't get a job in IT, you can always be a nun. No, it doesn't work that way. Any other questions? Okay, well then, I think, Brother Shankara, you should conclude our...
First, thank you so very much for making time to come with us. Om Hari Om. Om Hari Om. Oma Satoma Satya, Tamasoma Jyoti, Mrityorma Amritam, Avi, Avi. O dearly beloved Lord, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from death to immortality. Light us through and through with thy everlasting, shining presence. Hari Om Tat Sat, dearly beloved, make it so.
Java, Java.
Brother Shankara, I would like to make a closing comment here.
Yes, please.
So thank you so much for coming. It's quite amazing. I was thinking that in last 20 years or so, more than 20 years, we have seen so many monks coming over, and all due respect to the monks, but very few mothers like you have been here. And we have such a wonderful tradition that we have monks, and we also have nun order where we have all these wonderful mothers like you. And so we would definitely like to see you and all
Yes.
mothers over there, at the Santa Barbara and other centers also. And that's what we have been talking to Swami Sarvadevanandaji and all. And on behalf of the board, I would like to thank you and all the devotees who are involved and all the volunteers who helped in all the logistics and everything, and also at the center over there, the potluck and other. And with COVID, we have had situation where we went almost virtual, and now we are trying to get into a hybrid mode where we are trying to get some few talks over here, and trying to see if we can get more people coming in at the center. So this becomes more lively, like the connection. And I mean, the virtual thing it does help definitely. Like on the weekend, sometimes when it's cold and rainy, we would like to just sit on the couch and just turn the computer on. And I attend the Tuesday and Wednesday classes, and I know Haimaji and Brother Shankar also. It's comfort, but this something has its own flavor, and it's amazing. So that's what we would like to do as a board and as the devotees, and we have lots of work around to keep the center going. As you know, Brother Shankara is at the facility over there, and so most of the time we have Aarti in the evening Vespers. Balakrishna ji does Aarti every day, and so we need volunteers. We need more people to come in, and we have the shrine open here, so come and meditate as much as you want, and contribute time. And also the another aspect which I would like to talk about is, because this is the time of the year we go out and request for donations, and so please keep the center in your thoughts and prayers, and also if you can donate, because we are seeing some deficit because all the facility we have here with the insurance and everything. So we have expenses going on, and with the donations coming in, so we have almost 50% deficit. I mean, I don't want to go that part too much, but I'm very positive that we'll pull it off, and we'll have enough funds going forward. But if you can keep coming and also donate, and donate your time and money, it will be really wonderful.
May I add a note too?
Yeah.
I ask you as an outsider to please support this center and to encourage your friends to come to people you think would enjoy the message here. Because satsang and company of like-minded souls is very important in our spiritual life. A friend of mine said, who has an educational facility for kids, Vivekananda Vidyapith in New Jersey, says to people, because they've also had a problem with people wanting to do everything online where you can stay home in your jammies and have your coffee in bed. The problem with that, he said, you can get the information, but you don't get the vibes. You get, the vibes are really important. There is a thing that you get. For one thing, this place has a holy atmosphere. For one thing, we get each other's fellowship. And we don't get that at home with our cup of coffee sitting by ourselves. We need each other's support. And this place, I would really hate to see this place lose its strength, because it's a very important foothold for the spirituality of Atlanta and the South. It's a unique place in the South.
It won't happen these days.
No, but I think we need to really think about what we can do to put our shoulders to the wheel and make it happen even more.
Yes.
Because you'll be doing yourself a favor and you'll be doing your friends a favor. If you think they're interested, I never push anything on anybody. But if you think people would be interested in hearing this kind of open-hearted, helpful message about our own divinity and our potentiality, then say, you know, I do this, you might be, if you ever want to come along, let me know. Very open, but just do what you can to help support, because as a board member myself in Southern California, it can be tough. It can be tough trying to balance everything out. And often it lands on just a few people and they get tired. You don't want them getting tired. You don't want that happening. So ask you in whatever way, just show up. Showing up is like 3/4 of the issue. Show up in person and let people know you care. It makes a difference.
And in response to what Shayla, I think if you start with Jyoti, you'll find that other nuns are being invited. I won't speak for her. It will be announced in the newsletter.
Yeah.
Who's coming. Others are coming and others are promised. They promised to come.
I want to add something. Thank you so much. I wish Swami Yogeshananda was here to hear your words. And the way this center has grown since Vrajaprana came. And
it's his open-hearted, open-minded approach to the world.
Exactly. And I wish Yogeshananda was here to see this. But I'm sure he's seeing from heaven that it is doing wonderful, is growing, is thriving. And thanks, please keep coming back.
Well, that's Brother Shankar and I both know we're all just puppets in the hand of Thakur and Holy Mother. Their grace, the divine. Shama. So shall we?
So let's
Okay.
call it an afternoon.
Okay.
Well, we have a wonderful potluck over there, so please, there's enough food for everyone.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm gonna go inside for a little bit. Lord will take care of it.
you can speak.